And now I'm turning to my interview with Jonathan. We can't just be like, all the time. We got to have some good stuff to talk about as well. So, Jonathan, please introduce yourself. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. I appreciate you. I know it's short notice. I just found you yesterday, and now we're on today.
Well, we clicked, and when you click with somebody, you don't wait another week to talk to them, right?
So please introduce yourself real quickly, and then let's chop it up.
Yeah, well, my name is Jonathan Marcantoni. I'm a Puerto Rican author. Don't let the lack of accent fool you. I'm from Fajardo, Puerto Rico, and I've been in the publishing game for 7 years.
Okay.
I started out as an editor at Savant Books and Publications, which is this little house in Hawaii. And then I became editor-in-chief and was a co-founder of Anoa Publishing. And we actually made it, while I was editor-in-chief, we made it a big deal to seek out Latino authors. I'm very happy to say that 4 of my authors have won awards for their books.
Oh, nice.
So very, very proud of all of them. They're really aggressive and passionate writers. So ambitious is I couldn't think of the word ambitious. But no, I'm also a novelist myself, and I write essays, satires. I have 4 books that are out. My most recent was Kings of 7th Avenue, which was about the Tampa club scene, and particularly about the misogyny that inflects that scene, and how that misogyny, it's very much tied to machismo. Tampa has a huge Italian and Puerto Rican and Cuban heritage to it, but that seeps out into the larger culture. So it was a love story with a very very serious subcontext to it, and that's me. I know we were going to talk about. I'm about to launch a new publishing house. So yeah,
sweet.
Still trying to get out there and represent Hispanic writers and Caribbean writers, because we don't have a whole lot of outlets. Unfortunately.
No, that's true. So just like I mentioned earlier in the show, you guys, just reflecting on the 4th of July a little bit, I ran across this piece from Latino Rebel. And it was actually written by Jonathan about basically being Puerto Rican on the 4th of July. And I thought it was awesome because I think like we have all these arbitrary distinctions, whether you're Puerto Rican, Black, Mexican, whatever it is, we have all these arbitrary distinctions. But for many of us, Native American, we have similar feelings of conflict. For some people, angst around when we talk about these holidays like the 4th of July or Columbus Day, these holidays that are rooted in and considering what's going on. So I was really excited and followed him. And then we clicked, like he said, and we chatted back and forth. And so he told me about this really amazing project that he's working on. And it's definitely, we talk about, progressive media and independent media, but we definitely need, publishing and literature that reflects, we talk a lot about representation. Exactly what Jonathan is working on now is it helps fill out the circle, so to speak, when we're talking about, increasing representation in media, progressive media, independent media, having independent progressive publishing, that's representative and expanding the voices of others is great. So Jonathan, tell me a little bit about this new imprint, the group you're working with, and kind of how you got started.
Of course. Well, first let me say, when you were saying about, we have to have some positive stuff. It can't always be fierce. Definitely, if I'm on the show again, you can bring me on to be fierce too. My articles
well, definitely. Well, we'll have to chop that up a little bit more too. But I wanted to do. Yeah. We needed something like kind of upbeat because there's so much right now that keeps us all like. This was I found this very motivating. Listening to you, listening. We were chatting yesterday, chatting about the imprint and kind of how you got started and what you were looking at doing.
Yeah. So our imprint, we're La Casita Grande is the name of the publisher. We're an imprint of Black Rose Writing, which is a really great medium-sized press in San Antonio.
Okay.
And the owner of it, well, they published my last book, and the owner of it launched 2 imprints earlier this year. One was for environmental literature, and
Oh,
another
nice.
one is a design service for self-published authors to help them
Okay.
have high-quality design.
Okay.
And my idea for La Casita Grande is one that I've carried around for a long time. I mean, going back to my early 20s, I'm 32 now. So it's something I've been thinking about for over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And me and one of my authors, Chris Campagnoni, went from being one of my authors, now he's one of my very close friends.
Mm-hmm.
We started a mentorship program because called University Project. And the impetus behind that program was to teach writers the business side of writing, as well
Wow.
as help
Okay.
them with the artistic side of writing, because the business side is shut off to a lot of poor people because they can't go to conferences,
Right.
or I mean, they don't even have money to buy books. You know, I mean, I myself, I've spent most of my adult life in pretty bad poverty, really skimming to get by. The most stable I've ever been was I spent 4 years in the army,
Okay.
and you know, and part of that is having kids when you're 22. You know, that makes a big difference. But you know, I've always struggled getting into the writing world as an author because so much of the access
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, New York presses or to big time
Yeah.
journals, really to that exposure, you have to spend a ton of money.
Right.
And being, you know, a young parent, being, you know, struggling to get by, and then being in the military and all, it's like I can never attend them. I can never go
Right.
to them.
Right.
But because I got a job at a publishing house and was able to move up on that side, on that end of things, I
Okay.
got that exposure. And one of the things that I found was that all of these supposed gateways, like conferences or workshops, they're complete BS. Like there's nothing that there's no information that they give you that you couldn't figure out on your own. Or that you shouldn't get for free. And
Right.
so me and Chris, we started this mentorship program where we would hook up people with our connections. We have a lot of media connections, we have a lot of artistic connections and publishing connections. And so so we would get these up and coming authors. And one of the things I'm very proud to say is that all of our authors that went through the program were all female, and 3 of them were women of color. You
Nice.
know, and you know, I think that's super important that we have that. So when I saw that Black Rose Writing was starting imprints, I pitched them La Casita Grande, which was to do publishing, but not where you just sign the writer and publish their book and leave them to the woods to figure out
Right.
what to do.
Right.
So much, because the greatest misconception that authors have is that when the book comes out, it's going to be a hit. Like
Yeah.
just like millions of people are going to want to read their book. And one of the things that I always have to tell writers, whether I'm working with them as an editor, as a publisher, or whatever, even just as a friend, is that you're going to be met by indifference.
Right.
Like that's the baseline, is indifference. So how do you cultivate interest? How do you fight against that? And so our publishing structure is that we sign the writers, and then we spend 9 months getting them to set up a website, helping them
Okay.
out with setting up their social media profiles, making, you know, author profiles, not personal ones, cultivating interest in their community, not just the community online, but their personal community, you know, going out and doing events that are free, or organizing events. How do you organize events? So many people don't even know how to do that. So many writers don't know how to do an interview properly. So
Right.
teaching them those skills and introducing them to our network of artists and publishing figures and media figures, so that and all the while we're working on the manuscript at the same time. We're editing the manuscript at the same time. So at the end of 9 months, when their book comes out, they already have a base. They already have a readership.
Right.
They already have events lined up. You know, there's already things moving, as opposed to the book coming out and them just shrugging their shoulders, not sure what to do next.
So it sounds like a real meaningful investment in the writer from the very beginning, and not just waiting to see kind of like who sticks, you know, after
Right,
so many attempts. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So what well, what, just to kind of step back a little bit, because what kind of motivated you though to first start like really writing? I mean, writing, you know, people have stories, we all have stories to tell, but not everybody can discipline themselves to sit down and write an essay, let alone an entire book, or a book, let alone an essay.
Well, I got started out in theater when I was a real little kid.
Okay.
I actually started doing theater when I was 6. And from a very young age, me and my friends would write skits together.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my cousins, we would write like little goofy short films that we would do around the house. It was just crazy stuff like stop motion animation with Aunt Jemima and a joint. And, you know, things like that. We were rowdy kids, right?
Gotcha.
So when I really got into acting and doing community theater and semi-professional theater, one of the things that you find when you're really young, you know, when you're just a teenager, is how limiting your roles are. So me and my friends we started up this little group we called Orwell's, and that was after this cafe that we used to go to. So Orwell's was just us getting together like every weekend, and we would workshop each other's scripts. And sometimes we would take, you know, our parents' camcorder and go around town and film improvs or try to make a movie out of our scripts or whatever. And it was a real like intense collective of artists that we had. And so when I moved to Atlanta, when I was 19 to go to the Art Institute.
Okay.
And that only lasted like 3 months. It wasn't a very good experience.
Gotcha.
But after that, you know, I was living on my own. I was working odd jobs, and I still wanted to be creative. And I found that I couldn't afford to do, you know, unpaid internships and to work at a theater for like less than minimum wage to do a play.
Right.
And the film scene, forget about it. You know, I mean, that's all a lot of work and no money. So, and you know, this was in 2006, so it was before Walking Dead and Atlanta.
Right, it's before Atlanta South, Hollywood South, the Hollywood South boom, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Because it's insane now. They're getting ready to film the Black Panther here. Like, it's wild. Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for that movie.
I know that's gonna be awesome.
Well, no, the director, I mean, he is one of the most exciting directors out there. And I want him to like be what Spike Lee could have been, you know, like be a super successful. I love Spike Lee.
My friend, we have a series of conversations ahead of us, obviously.
Yes, clearly. So anyway,
go ahead. No, I was gonna say, go ahead.
Just, I got my first writing gig. It was with this production company that was down on the West End, called Fornice. And it was a pretty raggedy operation, but they paid me. It was the first time I got paid for my writing, and I saw that, well, writing, you know, I can have the 3 jobs and all this craziness in my life and still find the time to do it.
Right.
So that was how I got started with dedicating myself just to writing. But I also try to infuse my writing with those theatrical and filmic influences that I have.
Right.
So I created a style called visualism. And visualism is writing that it's very intense, it's very expressive, and it's highly dependent on specific visual images. And that's something that my upcoming book, Tristiana, actually, like, I take styles of painting and photography, and I learned how to imitate them with words. So yeah, it's what I call portrait style. Okay. And so, you know, you were asking me about or you were mentioning about, how I'm wanting to do some really good things for these minority writers, and one of those things is showing them that, hey, you guys can be completely experimental and crazy and just unique and find an audience. Like, that's not just the bevy of white people, and most white people are just writing bland crap anyway. So be super expressive, super experimental, super unique, and bring an audience to you. Don't be afraid of being different.
So how have you found, like, working just in what you've been doing and building stuff, how have you found that building the audience? How have you found that process? You've been doing it now for what, a decade or so, you said. So, like, how has it been now that social media is kind of like, with Twitter and Facebook and stuff, it's kind of at a higher point than it was, when we're talking about early mid 2000s. Like, how have you found building that right. social media presence, that audience, that finding that niche?
Well, actually social media has helped in some ways, because people have become so attuned to building a community within a bubble. Okay. So, I mean, just the whole practice of social media has become so specified to who you are or who you'd like to be.
Okay.
That cultivating an audience that recognizes you for just being you, as opposed to trying to be like other people, is actually a whole lot easier. Whereas before social media, if you tried to be really different, you would get shunned left and right.
Right.
I've been called every horrible thing as an artist, like every kind of insult you could imagine is being broken down, is like, you don't even know how to write. Like, I even got told that once, you don't even know how to write. No. I mean, people will say really nasty things. And before the advent of social media, you couldn't just, hop on your Facebook or hop on your Twitter, be like, so-and-so said this about me, and then get like 20, 30, 40 people defending you and trying to lift you up and stuff. So, I mean, I know that social media isn't always positive. Believe me, right. I got the negative end of social media once for a piece that I wrote. So I know how bad it can be. But the fact of the matter is, when you're trying to find your own audience, it's much easier now, because you already are designing your life to surround yourself with people who are like-minded. Okay. I mean, there's things that are very limiting and not so good about that, but in this instance, it's kind of a positive. It works out for you.
Okay. So just tell me, so let's go back to the imprint. So what's kind of like, what's your timeline? Like, what are you looking at? Like, where are you at with it? And when you're looking to launch? And
all right, well, we're going to do a launch party on October 20th.
Okay.
My editorial crew is in Brooklyn. I'm in Colorado Springs, which is in south central Colorado. And so this is going to be really different for Colorado. Now, not just for Colorado Springs, Colorado as a whole. There's a state that is only very recently darkening, so to speak. I got into some trouble because I called out the Pikes Peak Writers Conference, which is right here in Colorado Springs. It's the largest writers conference in the Rocky Mountain region. So I mean, that's covering, like, I think it's 7 or 8 states, the largest conference. And for the last 3 years, and even beyond, but the last 3 years when I've been paying attention, all of their prominent speakers have all been white. The agents that they bring in for the conferences, you'll have a couple females, maybe one female of color, one guy of color, and then 20 white people, and so, and I called them out on it. But they don't want to do anything about it. But you go into writers groups, you go into, I have an organization here, Lighthouse Writers in Denver, and it's really predominantly just white run. There is not a Latino voice here. And so my goal with La Casita Grande, when we talk a lot with our writers about, you need to integrate yourself into your own community. And that's what we're looking to do here. We're like, hey, yeah, we're for Latino and Caribbean writers. We know there's not a huge percentage of the population. Actually, only 13% of Colorado's population is Latino.
Okay.
But the tools that we're giving them and the voice that we're giving them is something that benefits all of us. It benefits our entire community, can attract a lot more interest, can attract a lot more creativity here.
Nice.
And, you know, so we see ourselves as a Colorado company, not just a Latino one.
Awesome. I love it. So, parting thoughts, because our time is already.
Yeah, no, because we could talk forever, can't we?
But definitely we're gonna schedule some more conversations, because seriously, you have a new friend now. But just to wrap it up, what were parting thoughts about La Casita Grande or anything else, you know, involving the writing, the work that you would want to?
You know, I just want to say, you know, kind of what you were talking about with Blacks and Latinos and the way that we're treated as opposed to how like white people get treated, like Hillary Clinton, for instance. You know, one thing that I want to put out there is, you know, the past is whatever the past was. And it is very easy, especially in progressive communities, to get hung up on the past not being what we wish it was. And I think that really what's best, especially, you know, to take on the moniker of progressive, it means moving forward. It doesn't mean forgetting the past, but it means taking what was there in the past and trying to create a better future. And that especially goes with artists. You know, as artists, you know, it's really not. If we just look at our past through these mythological eyes of like, well, brown people are always the victim, white people are always the dominant oppressors or whatever. For one thing, that's not accurate. It's not an accurate view of the past. But also that affects the way that we perceive the present and how we can shape the future. Because if you're really wanting a society of equals, if you're really wanting unique expression, and you're really wanting art that pushes people into new terrain and is transformative, because art should be transformative, then you have to look at the nitty gritty of the world and recognize, hey, there's a lot of bad and there's a lot of good. How can I learn from the bad and how can I increase the good? And when you look at it that way, then you're talking about building bridges where they had once been burned down. And I think that as artists, we really should focus on that a lot more, because if you're going to be mad at things you can change.
Right.
You know, you can't change what happened in 1950, but you can change what's happening in 2016. You know, I've gotten on to a lot of Latino activists about, like, you know, you guys want to rail against the Spaniards for something that happened 500 years ago, but you give America a pass when, you know, just back in May, they helped overthrow Brazil's leftist government. And it's all this right-wing
conversation. Yes, another conversation.
Exactly.
Yes, so, many conversations ahead of us.
If we're going to enact change, we need to focus on the now, on the now, and perfecting the society we have in front of us. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're fine. Definitely agree. Yeah. I appreciate you so much for joining me on such short notice and definitely providing some lighthearted motivation and for real motivation to the show this evening, because talking politics all the time can get so. So I appreciate you so much for joining me, and we'll definitely have to keep conversing and schedule another conversation. We can talk some more, especially looking towards, you know, the launch of the imprint, because that's pretty exciting. And I'm gonna have to message you about getting at least your most recent book. So I appreciate you so much for joining me. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me on.
All right, talk to you later.
All right, later. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.